You're with Julian on the Brown Note and a review of one of the most divisive, controversial and critically derided films of the year, Antebellum. Not brand new, 18th of September, it got a cinematic release, and probably the most noted thing about it is the star is Janelle Monae, singing superstar, who follows up from a very prominent race film, Moonlight, a few years ago, where I can't remember the guy's name, but she was the wife of the guy that won an Oscar in that film. Now, this is such an obvious thing that I don't know why anyone hasn't done it before. We've seen endless takes on, I think it was a book in the 1930s, The Most Dangerous Game, and in the modern era, The Hunger Games, but basically the paradigm of keeping people captive and chasing them or killing them for fun or putting them in an environment where they're sport, and taking a civil war slant on it. And it's such an obvious paradigm. I'm surprised that no one's actually gone down this road. I think it's very telling that The Hunt, probably about half as good as this film, gets about twice as much on Rotten Tomatoes. That came out, I reviewed it earlier this year. This is a debut by Gerard Bush and Christopher Renz. It starts with a very beautifully shot and lit Civil War paradigm where we've got African American slaves being mistreated by Confederate soldiers, and suddenly we're in the modern world. And I don't want to give too much away about the paradigm because this shift is actually really well done. Janelle Monae being the central character, she's shown as someone who tried to escape from this plantation. There are some telling points. I noticed them burning the cotton, and there are some signifiers that point to what's going on. The environment they're in will lead to death. All the girls are basically used as sex slaves. Most of them are girls in this environment. In fact, most of them are women, although there are a few African American men around as well. It's a slightly weird plantation environment, and soldiers return from war, and so on. And then we're in the modern era, and Janelle Monae is a motivational speaker and talks about race, and obviously this whole film fits into one of the paradigms of the year politically, which is Black Lives Matter. Now, I don't want to give away too much more. It's probably, you can join the dots, and I think in the blurb describing the film it already has done that. This has got terrible reviews, absolutely appalling reviews. I think it's sitting at 28% on Rotten Tomatoes. I totally disagree with this appreciation of this film. On a base level, earlier this year, one of my most disappointing films of the year, probably my joint top with Tenet, would be The Five Bloods by Spike Lee. I thought it was an awful film in many ways, and I didn't think it had a lot to say about race either. It was interminable, and I didn't think that it really made many cogent, powerful points. I thought that it had a lot of flaws, and it's got like 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's an awful film. I think I gave it 3.5 out of 10, one of the worst films I've seen this year, and I just don't get it. I thought that it was the right director in the right place at the right time with the right subject matter. So why is this bombed? To say that this film is flawed is disingenuous. It is flawed. But so are most horror and sci-fi films, as far as the narrative or as far as the entirety of the product goes. There are innumerable flaws in The Five Bloods that you can't get away with. Its runtime, the fact that an hour and a half of it is dead time. This film, I think, has flaws, but it does an awful lot right. For a start, the screenplay is much tighter. It's very neatly delineated into 3 acts. It occupies its hour and 45-minute runtime easily without skipping a beat. And because it operates this paradigm of being in this sort of a revisit to the Hunger Games universe through a racial lens, it abandons all the setup, which is wonderful for me. It just goes straight into it. It doesn't explain anything that's happening. It doesn't give you, like in The Hunt or whatever, where it makes a really big thing about explaining this corporation that's doing it all, or why they're doing it all, or excessive backstory. None of that's here. It just goes straight in. Bam, first act into the Civil War. Bam, second act into the modern life. Some of the flaws, it is uneven, and I thought the script was pretty good, but the bits where Janelle Monae is a motivational speaker, I didn't understand. She talks about blackness and female blackness in particular on TV shows and in an auditorium where she's got a rapturous crowd. Those bits are cringe-inducing because the dialogue she's speaking is terrible. I don't know where that came from because the rest of the script isn't. The rest of the script is perfectly serviceable. So why they didn't sort of get a bit more interest in what she had to say on the news clips and so on, but this makes her a target for these people, obviously. And I thought in the middle act, where they're in the modern era, they have the famed actress Gaburi Sidibe, who was from Precious, and a white friend, and they go out on the night on the town. It wasn't perfect, and I thought it had some uncomfortable sex in the city aspects to it. The bit where, Sidibe is a very famous plus-size, horrible term, but a large actress. And a very attractive white man comes over and starts chatting her up at a table with Janelle Monae. Now, and just goes on about how beautiful she is. I thought that was really try-hard. I just thought it was smacked of trying way too hard. I didn't like Sidibe's character too much. Found her quite grating. Janelle Monae is superb. She does everything right. She is undoubtedly capable of being the lead in a film. She's got the charisma. She's a good enough actress. She's got the personality depth. And she doesn't do anything wrong in this film at all. I found the cinematography to be unusually strong. It's beautifully shot, particularly in the sort of glowing nighttime of this plantation, with everything sort of lit by fires, and moonlight and the fields waving, and in the daytime with these very high coloration on it. Great work on the cinematography. One slight annoyance, panning. I know it's a small thing, but they do slow panning in and slow panning to the side so much that I found myself going, oh, the camera's moving in, the camera's moving to the side. Too much. But these aren't big things for me. Some of the reviews I've seen have said that the twist at the end in the third act spoils the film. I didn't know it was a twist until I read the reviews, because to me it just came across as not that big a deal, and I kind of it reveals where the environment is and what the environment is. Is it heavy-handed? Possibly, but I expected it to be that environment. It wasn't a surprise to me that it ended up being in the environment it was in. I thought this film wiped the floor with The Five Bloods. I thought it had more to say about race. It was more polemic. It was more ambitious. It was more successful, particularly in the structure and the screenplay. I liked the performances more. I thought there was one standout performance in The Five Bloods and everyone else was perfunctory. There's way less dead time. It does what it needs to perfectly. I didn't find it particularly offensive. Some of the reviews have said that it, wallows in this horrific environment. Nothing you haven't seen before. And not to torture porn degree, I didn't really think that it pushed buttons that badly on that. I thought that it had a lot to say. I thought that it put out the paradigm of the film and the setup and what it could potentially have said was fantastic, and it didn't reach all of those targets. But that said, I always rate films that are super ambitious above films that just tread water. And they do a lot of things right, get quite a few things wrong, but it still ends up one of the most interesting films I've seen this year. And if we're going to give The Five Bloods so much kudos for being about Black Lives Matter and race and so on in America, I don't understand how this film has been scrubbed out. I don't understand how The Hunt, a much bigger failure of a film, just about passable, gets twice as much on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't understand it. This is a much more beautifully made film. It's more interesting. It's more dynamic. It's more ambitious. And don't believe the hype. I thought this was really interesting. At the very least, it's interesting. and it passed by very quickly. Even though it's an hour and 3/4 long, it never dragged at all for me. I found the lead character of Janelle Monae to be a fascinating one. I thought that the paradigm was well handled. The writing was pretty tight overall, apart from the odd misstep, mainly in the sort of modern day era, and also the characters' behaviour when they're escaping at the end in the last third. I thought some of those things were a bit silly. I do focus on if characters act in a manner where you think, why are you doing this? This is not helping you. Some other bits I thought really stuck out. I mean, when the mobile phone goes off, it's an amazing moment. It happens twice, and it's an amazing moment both times. So I think this film deserves a lot more credit than it's given, and a lot more credit than The Five Bloods or The Hunt. So I'm going to give Antebellum, and obviously Janelle Monae can do whatever she wants. Talk about being disgustingly talented at absolutely anything you do. And she's got the looks for it and the charisma. She's definitely going to get, I imagine they're going to push her for an Oscar role. But she's shown she can do heavy lifting in a very dark place in this film. So I'm going to give Antebellum a 7.5 out of 10. Whereas on Rotten Tomatoes it's sort of down in the 3 out of 10s. So 7.5 out of 10 for Antebellum on the basis of it being well made, ambitious, relevant, and I actually was interested all the way through, and it does, leave you with some interesting points. Antebellum, 7.5 out of 10 from last week's feature album, Bad Boy Chiller Crew for Wake No Breaks from